Hey everyone, it's Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and for today's video, I have another fun custom budget commander build. The order was for an Isshin 2 Heavens as 1 combat-based build with a budget of $40. I don't get requests for 3-colored decks that often, so I was excited to build this and show off some of my solutions to fixing mana on such a low budget. For those of you that don't know what Isshin does, let me show you real quick. Isshin is 3 mana, 1 of each red, white, and black, for a 3/4 legendary human samurai with one very fun ability that this deck is based around. Its ability states that if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Notice that the ability says whenever a creature and not just a creature you control. This means that an opponent's creature attacking can also affect Isshin's ability if you happen to control something that would trigger from that. This ability leads to a combat-based strategy, and the obvious choice of creatures is to go with ones that have abilities that trigger when they attack, so that's what I built. Keep in mind that there are hundreds of creatures with this effect, so it was a matter of narrowing it down to the ones I thought would synergize well with each other, while also fitting the budget that I was given. So with all that said, let's take a look and see how I went about building Isshin 2 Heavens as 1 on a $40 budget. So as you should know by now, I like to start with the lands on my budget commander decks. The name of the game for this deck was Mana Fixing, as far as the lands I chose, because this is a 3-color deck. So I start with Command Tower. I don't normally put these in my budget commander decks just because I don't have enough of them. However, in a 3-color deck or higher, it's warranted, so it goes in there because it's great mana fixing. Same thing with Path of Ancestry. It comes into play tapped, taps to add a mana of any color that's your commander's color identity, and then since this is a creature-based deck, it has another ability that fits with it, which is that whenever any mana is spent to cast, whenever the mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, you scry 1. So Isshin is a samurai human, so I don't exactly think there are too many samurai in here, but there are some humans, so you will get some benefit out of that. However, the mana fixing of the 3 colors is what I was going for here. Nomad Outpost, it enters tapped and then taps to add one of the 3 colors that you need, so it's great for mana fixing. And then I have the 3 Thrivings that fit the color scheme. So the Bluff is for red, and then you choose the other color. Heath is for white, and then Moor is for black. And again, it's mana fixing. I understand that they come into play tapped, but this is a budget deck, so this is what I have to work with. Cave of Temptation, so it comes into play untapped, which is the important thing about this. It taps to add a colorless, and yes, a lot of this deck needs color, but they also need colorless, so that's great. You can tap it to filter 1 mana, so you can pay 1 and tap it to add a mana of any color, and then another thing that goes with a creature-based deck is its last ability. You can pay 4 and tap it, sacrifice it, and put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature, and you can only activate that anytime you can cast or play a sorcery or cast a sorcery. So mana fixing, mana fixing, mana fixing. That's what this is for. Shimmering Grotto. So I have a couple of lands that are like this in here. It's just like the Cave of Temptation, only it doesn't have that nice ability of adding counters. So it comes into play untapped, and it can tap to add a colorless, or you can filter a land for 1 and tapping it to add a mana of any color to your mana pool. So mana fixing here. Unknown Shores, same thing. And then that's it. But Filter Ruin is something you should recognize from any budget deck that I've done before as well, because you should know by now that I really like to put a land destruction land or a land destruction card of some sort in every deck because you just don't know what's out there and what you're going to face, and sometimes lands can be devastating. The Natural Order of Terramorphic Expanse, just because I want to thin the deck of lands and go get the land that we need if we need it. And then the rest of it is going to be mountains, plains, and then of course swamps. I don't remember how many. I will put the link to the deck list in the description so you can see how many it was exactly if you want to. For the ramp section, I went all mana rocks, but I tried something new this time. It's the first time I've tried using a specific kind. So we'll start off with our Mind Stone because it's a 2 to cast, doesn't come into play tapped, and taps to add a colorless, but the bonus is later in the game you can sacrifice it to draw a card, which is one of the reasons why I like Mind Stone so much. Same thing with Commander Sphere, only this time instead of colorless, it gives you a color of whatever you need because it gives you a color of your commander's color identity. And then you can sack it for free to draw a card later if you, again, don't need it. This is where it's going to be different. I don't do 3-color decks often enough just because they're not requested as much, but I went with Savai Crystal. It's 3 to cast. It taps to add one of the colors of the commander's identity, so it's red, white, and black. Or later in the game, you can cycle it away, just like the lands that I like to do on the 2-color decks and the 1-color decks. You can cycle this away if you don't need it later. Mardu Banner, 3 to cast. It's got the Mardu colors, which is red, white, and black. And then later on, if you don't need it anymore, again, you can pay the Mardu colors, tap it, sack it, and then draw a card. And then this is something I haven't done often. I don't use the signets often. I wasn't a fan of them, but I may have been too harsh on them. They are 2 to cast, and they filter your colors. So it's 2 to cast for the Boros one, and then you can pay 1 and tap it to add a white and red. The reason why I was hard on this is because I didn't like the filter part of it. However, I realized later that you're paying 1 to get 2 mana out, so it actually does happen to get you ahead as you're playing. So the same thing with the Orzhov Signet. It's the white-black version, and then the Rakdos Signet, which is the red and black colors. The creature section of this deck is going to be the biggest section, obviously, and there's going to be a couple parts to it. So the creatures are going to have, obviously, whenever they attack, abilities, and I have different forms of what they do when they attack. So first section is going to be what I call the Anthem style effect guys, who will buff creatures for attacking. So we start off with Goblin War Driver. It's 2 red for a 2/2 that has an ability called Battle Cry, and that means that whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature, gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And that's what I mean. That every time that these creatures that I'm going to show you attack, something will get a bonus. So that was War Driver. Bolt Hound is another. It's a 30 cast 2/2 with haste. That whenever it attacks other creatures you control, get +1/+0, and they don't have to be attacking. A Quarter Paladin, 2 to cast 3/1 with Battle Cry. I just read that off to you. Rock's Veteran is a 4 to cast 2/4 with Battle Cry, but an additional ability that I will hone in on a little later as well. And the additional ability is that whenever it attacks, you tap target creature an opponent controls. That's important. That's a nice little control factor to make sure that you can set up the blocks the way you want. Inspiring Unicorn is a 4 to cast 2/2 that when it attacks, creatures you control get a buff of +1/+1 until end of turn, and they don't have to be attacking. Sir Alan, the Lion's Claw, is a 5 to cast 4/4 first striker that when it attacks, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, again, just like the Unicorn. Honored Crop Captain is a 2 to cast 3/2 that when it attacks, other attacking creatures you control get +1/+0. It's almost like Battle Cry. And the last Anthem style creature will be Tori Davnet, the Fury Rider. 2 red, 1 white, and 1 of any for a 3/3 with Vigilance and Trample. And whenever it attacks, all other attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. And then other red attacking creatures you control gain Trample, and you untap other white attacking creatures you control. The next set of creatures I'm going to show you will be the control style of creatures. So I showed you the white creature earlier that it makes it so it taps another creature. These are going to make it so that your opponent's creatures can't block. So we start with Frenzied Goblin. It's a 1 to cast 1/1 that when it attacks, you may pay a red. And if you do, target creature can't block this turn. With Isshin's ability, you still have to pay the additional red if you want to have it trigger again, just so you're aware. Firefish Striker is a 2 to cast 2/1 with Battalion, and it says whenever it and at least 2 other creatures attack, target creature can't block this turn. So you see where I'm going? Making it so that they cannot block is key here. Goma Fada Vanguard is a 2 to cast 2/2, and then whenever it attacks, target creature and opponent controls with power less than or equal to the number of warriors you control can't block this turn. And I think there are 9 or 10 warriors in here, so you can, it itself is a warrior, so at least the power can be a 1 power creature, at the very minimum. Glamour Shaman, 3 to cast 1/1 with an ability called Riot, and it says that this creature enters the battlefield with either a +1/+1 counter or haste. And then whenever it attacks, target creature and opponent controls can't block this turn, as like the other ones, making a lot of decisions for your opponent much harder for them and easier for you. Forge Hammer Centurion is a 3 to cast 3/2. Whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put an oil counter on it. And then whenever it attacks, you may remove 2 oil counters from it, and when you do, target creature can't block this turn. Again, I believe you still have to pay the 2 oil counters with Isshin's ability, and I don't remember off the top of my head if that's true or not, but I will check and make sure if I'm correct or not. Plasma Jockey, 4 to cast 3/1. Whenever it attacks, target creature and opponent controls can't block, and this has Blitz. I'm not a fan of Blitz, but it has it. Blitz is that you pay 3, you put it into play for its Blitz cost, it has haste, and then you sacrifice at the end of turn, and it is a 3/1. The one I do like for that, similar of that ability of Blitz, is Dash. Goblin Heel Cutter is a 4 to cast 3/2 with Dash 3. And whenever it attacks, target creature can't block this turn. Dash is an upgrade to Blitz, because Dash says you can put it into play for its Dash cost, and instead of sacrificing it at the end of the turn, you return it to your hand, so you can do it again later. The next set of creatures I'm going to go over are utility. They are extra damage dealers, and I'll show you what I mean by that. We start off with Hellrider. It is a 4 to cast 3/3 with haste that says whenever a creature you control attacks, Hellrider will deal 1 damage to the defending player. So if for some reason you have a lot of tokens in play that you're attacking with, Hellrider will deal 1 damage for each one of those attacking. Now remember, they can't enter play tapped and attacking. That does not trigger Hellrider, but if they are declared as an attacker, it will. Pulse Tracker is a 1 to cast 1/1 that whenever it attacks, each opponent loses a life. Pretty simple. Spiteful Returned is a 2 to cast 1/1 that has Bestow, and I will go over that in a second. And it says whenever Spiteful Returned or the enchanted creature attacks, defending player loses 2 life. Bestow makes it so that you can cast this for its Bestow cost, and it actually enters play as an aura enchantment enchanting a creature. So that's why it says whenever the enchanted creature attacks, they lose 2 life. But it also gives a bonus to the creature of +1/+1 for being on it. One of the cool things about Bestow, if Spiteful Returned is actually enchanted on something and that creature dies, it falls off and turns into the 1/1 version of itself as a creature. Infectious Horror is a 4 to cast 2/2 that when it attacks, each opponent loses 2 life. Very simple. Silent Skimmer, 4 to cast 0/4 with Devoid, Flying, and then whenever it attacks, defending player loses 2 life. It has a 0 power. That can change with this deck, but for now it has a 0 power. The only point of this is that when it attacks, people lose life, and it triggers an additional time with Isshin. Speaking of tokens, I did mention it for a reason. This does have some token generators. Goblin Trap Runner, 4 to cast 4/2. When it attacks, you flip 3 coins, and for each flip that you win, you create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. And that's why I said earlier that things that are entering play tapped and attacking don't count for some of the triggers like Hellrider. That's important because some of these do that. Pugnacious Pugilist is a 5 to cast 4/4, and whenever it attacks, you create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target, and this has splits just like the other card did. So you can play it for its splits cost, and then you have to sacrifice it at the end of the turn, which is why I like Dash better. Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, is a 5 to cast 5/4. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if you're the defending player, you create a 3/3 red ogre creature token unless that creature's controller pays 3. Yes, Isshin works when your opponent's creatures attack, because the ability says that if a creature attacking causes an ability you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So this says whenever an opponent's creature attacks, which is a triggered ability, and it's triggered because of an attacking creature, so Isshin's ability will go off. Falconer Adept is a 4 to cast 3/3, and whenever it attacks, you create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. The reason why this one's important is because it creates flyers. This deck does not have a lot of them, so it kind of needs them. Remember that just because you create a token that's tapped and attacking, if it survives the combat, the token doesn't go away on you. Mardu Strike Leader, 3 to cast 3/2. When it attacks, you create a 2/1 black warrior creature token, and this one has dash, which means that you can pay 4, it'll come into play with haste, and then at the end of the turn you return to your hand if it has survived. Sky Knight Vanguard, I believe this is the last one here for the tokens. It's a 2 to cast 1/2 flyer, and then whenever it attacks, you create a 1/1 white soldier creature token that's tapped and attacking. So you see why I mentioned that it doesn't trigger anything when things are enter tapped and attacking. The last section of creatures that I'll go over for this deck are utilitarian. They all do different things. Some are similar than others, but not really. So I'll show you what I mean. We start with Bane of Balaged. It is a 7 to cast 7/5 Eldrazi that whenever it attacks, the defending player exiles 2 permanents he or she controls. That does actually trigger with Isshin an additional time, which would equal 4. That's pretty devastating. Artisan of Kozilek is a 9 to cast 10/9 that when you cast this spell, you may return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has Annihilator 2. Annihilator 2 means that whenever this creature attacks, the defending player must sacrifice 2 permanents. Can be very devastating with Isshin out. Alicia, Who Smiles at Death, is a 3 to cast 3/2 first striker that has that whenever it attacks, you may pay, this is called hybrid black-white. So what that means is you can pay 2 white, 2 black, or a black and white. And if you do, you return target creature card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. You can get quite a few cards that are in this deck back from your graveyard if they have died for some reason. Hoarding Ogre is a 4 to cast 3/3 that when it attacks, you roll a d20. On a 1 or a 9, you create a treasure token. On a 10 or 19, you create 2 of them. And on a nat 20, you create 3 treasure tokens. Good mana fixing. Chaos Channeler is a 4 to cast 4/3 that also allows you to roll a d20. And on a 1 or 9, you exile the top card of your library, and you may play it this turn. On a 10 or 19, you exile 2 cards, and you may play them. And on a nat 20, you exile 3 cards, and you may play them. And that's actually one of the reasons why the Ogre's in here. So it actually helps you be able to cast cards that were exiled with the Channeler. Hellkite Charger, this was an addition because of what the person who ordered this deck wanted. They had mentioned to me something about extra combat phases. The problem is that extra combat phases in Magic, the cards themselves usually are pretty hefty on the price tag. Hellkite Charger is one of the budget ones. It is a 6 to cast 5/5 with flying and haste. And then whenever it attacks, you may pay 7. And if you do, you untap all attacking creatures. And after this phase, there is an additional combat phase. And that's actually another reason why the Ogre is in here, because you kind of need to build up a lot of ability to create mana, because 7 mana is a lot. Alright, Hammers of Morden is a 3 to cast 3/3 with an ability I wish I could find more of for a cheap price, and then I could throw into a deck like this. Myriad says that whenever this creature attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of this creature that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker, and then you exile it at the end of the combat phase. And then it also has whenever it attacks, for each opponent, you tap up to 1 target creature that player controls, which fits very well into the whole target creature can't block. Nice synergy there, so you can control the board whenever you're attacking, and make sure you can tap down or make it so that your opponent's creatures can't block the way they want to, but the way you want to. And the last creature that I'll show you is Audacious Thief, 3 to cast for a 2/2, and whenever it attacks, you draw a card and lose a life, because this deck doesn't have a lot of card draw, so I had to find ways to get cards into your hand. The instants and sorceries of this deck are pretty simple. It's all removal. Spot removal as much as I could get. Simple enough: Disenchant, destroy an artifact or enchantment. Sanctify, destroy an artifact or enchantment and gain 3 life. Banishing Slash, 2 to cast to destroy up to one artifact, enchantment, or tapped creature. Then, if you control an artifact and an enchantment, you create a 2/2 White Samurai with Vigilance. Vanish into Eternity, it's 3 to cast. It exiles target permanent. However, it costs 3 more to cast if that permanent is a creature. Simply put, it's good removal for everything but creatures, and then it's okay removal for creatures. Angelic Purge, 3 to cast. You have to pay an additional cost of sacrificing a permanent, which you have enough token creation here that shouldn't be a problem, and you exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment. Feed the Serpent, 4 to cast for an instant that exiles a creature or a planeswalker. This is one of the very few planeswalker removal spells in here. I wanted to get planeswalker removal as much as I could, but here's the other one, Assassin's Ink. This is a really good one. It's 4 to cast, but it will cost 1 less to cast if you control an artifact, and also 1 less to cast if you control an enchantment, and it, again, destroys a creature or a planeswalker. Grim Bounty, 4 to cast, destroy a creature or a planeswalker, and then you create a treasure token. And this one was the little fun techie card I put in here. I thought this was kind of cute. Mage Hunter's Onslaught is 4 to cast for a sorcery that destroys a creature or planeswalker. And remember, we are a combat-based deck when I tell you what this other thing does. It says whenever a creature blocks this turn, its controller loses a life. If you're attacking with a lot of things and people are actually blocking, they're going to lose life regardless if they block or if they don't. I thought that was pretty cute. Rip Apart, 2 to cast. You can choose to either deal 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact or enchantment. So, again, I tried to get as much removal in here that was diversified so you could get rid of anything that you needed to. Dire Tactics is 2 to cast for an instant. It exiles a creature, and if you don't control a human, you lose life equal to that creature's toughness. You should have a human on the board when you play this. There shouldn't be a problem with that. And then the last card in this section is Rite of Oblivion. It's 2 to cast. That it has an additional cost of sacrificing a non-land permanent, and then you get to exile target non-land permanent, and you can flash it back, so this can be used twice. So as far as the enchantments go, this is the section I think thrives the most. And I have a couple of things in here that are something that I wanted to try for a very long time, and I just couldn't find the right deck. This was the right deck. It's not this one, but this one's a good one too. It's Curse of Opulence. It's a 1 to cast enchantment that you enchant a player, and it's a curse, so it curses them. And this curse says that whenever the enchanted player is attacked, create a colorless artifact token named Gold, which is basically just a treasure token. And then it says each opponent attacking that player does the same, so there's going to be a lot of gold tokens floating around. This is the card, and the next 3 after this are the ones I'm talking about where I've wanted to try these for a while. Circle of Flame is a 2 to cast enchantment that says whenever a creature without flying attacks you, or planeswalker you control, Circle of Flame will deal 1 damage to that creature. And remember, with Isshin out, it's an attack trigger that triggers something you control. This is that thing. This is going to affect that. Revenge of Ravens is a 4 to cast enchantment that says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller loses a life and you gain a life. So it hurts to attack you now. Blood Reckonings, it's kind of similar to Revenge of Ravens. It's 4 to cast, and whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller loses a life, so it just hurts them. It doesn't help you, it doesn't give you a life, but at least it hurts them. Campaign of Vengeance is a 5 to cast enchantment that whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses a life and you gain a life. Ray Bombardment is a 3 to cast enchantment that whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less attacks, Ray Bombardment deals 1 damage to the defending player. There are about 10 to 12 creatures in this deck that start off with a power of 2 or less, but you also create a lot of tokens that have a power 2 or less, so this will be going off a lot and will be slinging damage in a lot of ways. Goblin War Drums is a 3 to cast enchantment that this whole wording here basically says that creatures you control have menace, and the reason why I added this in here was because I have creatures in here that change the narrative of how your opponents can block. This makes it even harder because now your creatures can't be blocked by less than 2 creatures. So, if you can make it so some of their creatures can't block, it makes blocking a nightmare for them. Mardu Ascendancy, 3 to cast. Whenever a non-token creature you control attacks, you create a 1/1 goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking, and it doesn't say that player or any specific player, so you can choose whoever. And then if you need to, you can sacrifice it to give creatures you control +0/+3 until end of turn. I wouldn't do that part because I would like to get the tokens, and that's the other thing. I have to mention it again. Ray Bombardment will not trigger on these guys coming into play tapped and attacking, just like Isshin won't. Keep that in mind. On the next turn, however, they will when they're declared as attackers. War Cadence is a cute card. I like this card a lot in a deck like this. It's a 30 cast enchantment that says you can pay 1 red and X, and it has a colon, which means that you can do it on anybody's turn at any given time. It says creatures can't block this turn unless their controller pays X for each blocking creature. So if you put 2 into it, they have to pay 2 to be able to block with each creature that they control. Not 2 total, but for each creature. So if they want to block with 2, they have to pay 4, and so on and so forth. I thought that was pretty cute to go in a deck that's based around combat. And the last enchantment is Gleam of Battle. It's a 6 to cast enchantment that says whenever a creature you control attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Kind of takes away from the Ray Bombardment, but when you're getting more damage through anyway, it doesn't matter. And finally, the last section I'll go over is the artifact section. It's very short. It's only 2 cards, but what cards I have here are pretty good. Start off with Explorer Scope. It could have been over in the ramp section, but I liked it in this one. It's 1 to cast, it equips for 1, and says whenever the equipped creature attacks, look at the top card of your library, and if it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. The cool synergy here is with Isshin. So, when it triggers 2 times, if the first card is a land, you may get a second chance to do it again because you can put it into play. If the first card is not a land, you're just looking at the same card twice. And everybody should know by now, my budget decks get a equipment that protects a creature on the field with hexproof of some sort, and Mirror Shield is the one I choose. This also gives that creature +0/+2, which is nice for blocking and for being able to take damage. And there you have it, my friends. Isshin 2 Heavens is 1 on a $40 budget. I know that the most popular way people like to build this is Samurai Tribal / Typal with an Exalted subtheme, but I wanted to do something different and a little bit more chaotic. I believe that by adding some of the creature tapping effects and the making creatures not able to block effects, combined with some of the menace effects, has helped accomplish what I was going for. I really like the idea, and I hope the person who ordered this deck does too. So next week I was going to start unboxing and doing upgrade guides for the pre-cons I haven't done yet that Wizards released over the last year, but I've been so busy with custom orders, and the upgrade guides take so much more time that I believe I'm going to push that off until the beginning of 2024. In the meantime, I will attempt to bring you videos on some of the new budget commander builds I've been working on in between doing the custom orders. I'm not entirely sure though just yet, so you will just have to check back next Friday to see what I've decided to do. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or concerns, or you just want to talk about any of the videos I put out, you can do so using any of the methods I have displayed here. Additionally, if you would like to support the channel, you can do so in 3 ways. Donations are accepted and greatly appreciated. I have 3 methods with which you can do so displayed on the screen, and keep in mind that no amount is too small. If donations aren't your thing, and you would like to get something for your money, that's great too. I sell a lot of the decks I present on the channel, as well as mystery packs. So, if you're interested in any of these, you can contact me using the information I have on your screen right now. Directly contacting me is usually the best and cheapest way to do so, but you can always look at what I currently have available on the Facebook Marketplace. And lastly, if you want to show your love and support for the channel, but like myself, are a little strapped for cash, it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, watch some videos and give them a like, and possibly share them out on your social medias you use to help spread my content to more people. No matter what way you choose is greatly appreciated and will help support the channel, and I thank you for it. Sadly, that is all the time I have for this video. Thank you for watching, and please, stick around and watch some of the many great videos I've posted over the last few years, and remember to check back again for new content I'll be posting every week. Have a great day.